My father denied my raise for 3 years while I ran his entire company, only to make my golden boy brother the CEO 2 weeks after his graduation. He thought I was trapped. So I made one phone call to his biggest competitor, and now they're collapsing and begging me to come back. This is where the story truly begins, and you won't want to miss what happens. Make sure you're subscribed to see it through to the end. We're always curious. Where in the world are you all watching from today? Let us know in the comments. The fluorescent lights of the conference room flickered, buzzing with a high-pitched whine that felt like it was drilling directly into my skull. I was running on 3 hours of sleep, a half-eaten protein bar, and a cocktail of over-the-counter flu medication that was making the world feel like it was wrapped in cotton. I had a 101-degree fever, but our third-quarter logistics reports were due, and I was the only one who knew how to run the projections. I was the only one who ever had known. For 12 years, Miller Manufacturing had been my entire life. I started in the warehouse at 22, and now, at 34, I was the acting director of operations. Acting was the key word. In reality, I was the COO, CFO, and head of HR, all rolled into one. My father, Thomas, the founder and owner, hadn't looked at a supply chain manifest or a client contract in at least 5 years. He just cashed the checks. I was in the middle of a coughing fit, my throat raw, when my father walked in. He was 62, with a full head of silver hair and a smile that used to warm me. Now it just looked practiced. "Isabella, perfect," he said, clapping his hands. "You're here. Good." "The reports are almost done," I rasped, wincing as I swallowed. "I just need to finalize the cost per unit analysis for the new quarter." "Wonderful, wonderful," he said, waving his hand dismissively. He wasn't looking at me, but at the door, which opened again to admit my brother, Jason. Jason, at 23, was all polish and no substance. He had my father's smile, but his was plastered on, a permanent advertisement for himself. He'd just graduated with a business degree from a decent university, a degree I had helped pay for by deferring my own bonus again, and had been shadowing me for exactly 2 weeks. In that time, he had shown up late 6 times, taken a 2-hour lunch every day, and asked me if our main supplier, a company we'd worked with for 2 decades, was like a big deal or something. "Dad, Izzy," he said, nodding, already looking at his phone. He took the seat at the head of the table, my seat. "Thank you all for coming," Thomas said, beaming at his son. "As you know, Miller Manufacturing has been my life's work, but I'm not getting any younger, and it's time to think about the future. It's time for new blood, for a new vision." My heart hammered against my ribs. This was it. This had to be it. For 3 solid years, I had formally requested a title and salary review. I was being paid less than an entry-level logistics manager at any of our competitors, all while I had personally grown our client base by 40%. Each time, my father had dismissed me. "Be patient, Isabella. It's all in the family anyway. It's not about titles." I straightened my back, trying to look healthy, professional. This was the moment he would finally acknowledge me. He would finally make me president or COO. "Jason, my boy," Thomas said, placing a hand on his shoulder. "He's a natural, a real leader. He sees the future of this industry." The cotton in my head evaporated, replaced by a sudden, cold silence. I watched, as if from a great distance, as my father continued. "So, it is with immense pride that I announce Jason Miller as the new Chief Executive Officer of Miller Manufacturing, effective immediately." The room was silent. Our 2 senior-most employees, who I had hired and trained, stared at their notepads. Jason just grinned, puffing out the chest of his brand-new $1,000 suit. "But what?" The word escaped my lips before I could stop it. It sounded small, pathetic. My father finally looked at me, his smile tightening. "Oh, and of course, Isabella will be continuing in her vital role." He checked a note card, as if he couldn't remember my job. "She'll be our new head of support, to help Jason transition into his leadership position. A perfect fit." Head of support? I wasn't just demoted. I was erased. I was being relegated to an assistant, tasked with training the boy who had spent the last 2 weeks playing games on his phone. My fever, the exhaustion, the years of 70-hour weeks, it all coalesced into a single, terrifyingly sharp point of clarity. I looked at my father, who was already turning back to his golden boy, and I looked at Jason, who was accepting imaginary congratulations. I had given them my youth, my health, and my talent, and in return, they hadn't just passed me over. They had humiliated me. The betrayal was worse than the diagnosis of the flu. It was a sickness that had been living in this company for years, and I was just now realizing I was the only one who hadn't seen it. The betrayal was worse than any sickness, because I knew, in that instant, it was terminal. The rest of the meeting was a blur. I remember the sound of my father's voice, thick with false pride, and the occasional idiotic interjection from Jason about synergy and optimizing our brand. I sat perfectly still, my hands clasped so tightly in my lap that my knuckles were white. The fever was roaring back, but it was nothing compared to the glacial ice forming in my chest. I nodded, I smiled a thin, brittle smile, and when my father said, "So you'll get him up to speed, right, Izzy?" I heard myself reply in a calm, even voice. "Of course, Dad, whatever the company needs." Jason gave me a condescending pat on the shoulder as we left. "Don't worry, Izzy, I'll still let you handle the nerd stuff. You're great at it." I went back to my office, the large one with the whiteboard wall covered in my equations, the one I'd earned, and locked the door. For a full 10 minutes, I just stood in the dark, my forehead pressed against the cool glass of the window, watching the trucks in the loading bay. My trucks, my drivers, my schedules. My entire life had been a joke. I had sacrificed relationships, postponed starting a family, and missed countless events, all for a company that saw me as nothing more than a glorified cog. A cog they had just replaced with a shiny, useless button. My phone buzzed on the desk. It was a text from Marcus Shaw, the CEO of Apex Innovations. Apex was our largest and most successful competitor. Marcus was sharp, ruthless, and had been trying to poach me for nearly 2 years. I had always politely declined out of a stupid, misplaced sense of loyalty. His text was simple. He must have seen the internal announcement that had just gone out. "CEO, huh? Bet you're thrilled." I stared at the message. The old Isabella would have deleted it or replied with a polite, "We're very excited about the new direction." The new Isabella, the one who had been born in that conference room 10 minutes ago, picked up the phone. My voice was still a low rasp, but the feverish tremble was gone, replaced by something hard. "Marcus, Isabella Miller, you free for a call?" He picked up on the first ring. "I knew this day would come," he said, his voice void of surprise. "I just didn't think Thomas would be this stupid. A 23-year-old CEO? Is he insane?" "He's confident in his choice," I said, each word precise. "He's an idiot," Marcus replied flatly. "And he's about to lose the only thing keeping that relic of a company afloat. I saw the Q2 numbers you posted. You pulled a miracle out of that supply chain nightmare. He knows that, right?" "He knows that I'm a very good head of support," I said. Marcus was silent for a beat. Then he laughed, a dry, humorless sound. He actually. "Oh my, Isabella, I'm going to send you an offer letter. Right now, I'm not even going to lowball you. It's 5 times your current salary, plus a signing bonus that will cover whatever penalty you have for breaking your contract, which, by the way, I'd bet my left arm you don't even have." He was right, I never signed a formal contract. I was just family. "What's the job?" I asked, sinking into my chair. "Senior Consultant, Strategic Operations. Your job is to make me smarter, to make my company better. You bring me your brain, your processes, and any attachments you might have that are no longer happy at Miller. You report directly to me. You set your own hours. You start whenever you want." I looked at the whiteboard, at the complex logistics matrix I had designed. It was beautiful, intricate, and utterly incomprehensible to anyone but me. I had built a fortress, and I was the only one with the key. "I'll need 2 weeks," I said. "To give notice?" Marcus asked, surprised. "No," I said, a cold, slow smile spreading across my face. "To prepare my exit. I'll be in touch." I hung up. I sat in my office for the rest of the day, feeling the sickness and the betrayal wage war inside me. I was a victim, yes, but that was about to change. My father and brother had made a critical, fatal error. They had humiliated me, they had demoted me, but they had also, stupidly, left me in my office. They had forgotten one crucial thing. I wasn't just the head of support. I was the architect, and I knew exactly where all the load-bearing walls were. I was going to walk out of this building, and I was going to take the blueprints with me. The next 2 weeks were a masterclass in quiet, meticulous demolition. On the outside, I was the image of the dutiful, supportive daughter. I showed up, I nodded in meetings, and I began the transition. My fever broke, but the ice in my veins remained. My father, Thomas W., as in a state of paternal bliss. He saw himself as a patriarch passing the torch, a wise king securing his legacy. He had built Miller Manufacturing from nothing, a fact he never let anyone forget. He was a brilliant salesman in his day, a man who could charm anyone into a deal, but the industry had changed. It wasn't about handshakes anymore, it was about data, optimization, and relentless efficiency. He didn't understand the complex machine I had built to keep us competitive. He just knew that it spit out money. His devotion to Jason was baffling in its blindness. Jason was his golden boy, the son who looked like him, talked like him, and represented a do-over. I, on the other hand, was my mother's daughter, quiet, analytical, and in his eyes, a permanent fixture. I was the reliable, unpaid-for utility. You don't praise your furnace for running, you just expect it to work. The new CEO was even worse than I thought. Jason's entire operational strategy, which he'd proudly presented in his first all-hands meeting, consisted of 2 things: getting a new espresso machine for the break room and redesigning the company logo. "It just doesn't pop, Izzy," he'd said, holding up the classic, strong logo our clients had trusted for 30 years. "It needs to be more Web3. We manufacture custom steel gaskets for the aerospace industry, Jason," I'd replied, my voice dead flat. "Our clients don't care about Web3. They care about our parts not failing at 30,000 feet. He just waved me off. "You're thinking small, you've got to think about the brand." This was the man my father had chosen. A man whose primary skill was spending money we didn't have. He treated me with the breezy condescension of a boss who knows he's untouchable. He would forward me emails from clients, my clients I had landed and nurtured for years, with a simple "handle this." He didn't even bother to read them. While he was busy getting quotes for beanbag chairs, I was working, but not for him. I didn't steal, I didn't break a single law, I just organized. First, I downloaded all of my contacts, the personal cell numbers of every supplier, freight forwarder, and client lead I had. These weren't company property. They were relationships I had built, one 3 a.m. phone call at a time. Second, I documented my systems. I wrote a transition manual for Jason. It was beautiful. It was also completely useless. It listed what needed to be done, but not how or why. It listed the software platforms, but not the master admin passwords, which of course were only ever registered to my personal email. It described the client reporting system, but not the complex, custom-built macros I had written to make it function. To a novice, it would look like a comprehensive guide. To a professional, it would look like a map with no roads. And third, I made calls. I called our top 3 clients. "Just letting you know," I said, "I'm moving on from Miller Manufacturing. My last day is this Friday. I just wanted to personally thank you for your partnership over the years." The reaction was universal: panic. "What do you mean, you're leaving?" asked David, the procurement head of our largest account, a $10 million a year contract. "Isabella, you are Miller Manufacturing. Who's my new contact?" "I believe his name is Jason Miller," I said pleasantly. "He's the new CEO." The kid, the one who asked my assistant if we were hiring, David was apoplectic. "This is a disaster. Where are you going?" "I'll be taking a senior consulting role at Apex Innovations," I said. "I'm sure I'll be in touch." I didn't ask him to follow me. I didn't need to. I had just painted a very clear picture of two different futures for him, one managed by a child CEO, the other managed by me. On my last day, a Friday, I placed my transition manual on Jason's desk, along with my company laptop and keys. He was on the phone, arguing with a vendor about the color of the new espresso machine. I walked over to my father's office. He was on the phone, too, laughing, no doubt booking another golf trip. He saw me, waved me in, and finished his call. "So, all settled in with the new role?" he asked, not looking up from his computer. "Actually, Dad, today is my last day," I said. The silence that followed was heavy. He slowly swiveled in his chair. "What? What did you say? You're taking a vacation? After only 2 weeks with Jason?" "No, I'm resigning. I've accepted a position with another company." The color drained from his face. The jovial patriarch was gone, replaced by the cold, hard man I knew was underneath. "You're what? You can't. Who?" "Apex Innovations." His face, which had been pale, turned a deep, blotchy red. "You're going to them, to Marcus Shaw, after everything I've given you? This is betrayal, Isabella. This is." "This is what?" I interrupted, my voice as cold as his. "A business decision. You, of all people, should understand that. You made yours, I'm making mine." "I am your father," he roared. "And I was your most valuable employee," I shot back. "An employee you underpaid, undervalued, and publicly humiliated. You made a 23-year-old kid the CEO of a multi-million-dollar company 2 weeks after his graduation. You demoted the one person who kept this place running to head of support. This wasn't a family decision, Dad. It was a stupid one." He was speechless. He just stared at me, his mouth opening and closing. "My resignation letter is on your desk," I said, turning to leave. "Good luck, Dad. You're going to need it." I walked out of that office, out of that building, and I didn't look back. I got in my car, and for the first time in 12 years, I didn't feel sick or tired or angry. I felt free. My new office at Apex Innovations was on the 20th floor, with a floor-to-ceiling glass wall that overlooked the city. It was smaller than my old office, but it was mine. And the salary that hit my bank account at the end of the first week, a prorated amount that was still more than my old monthly pay, was definitely mine. Marcus Shaw was a man of his word. He didn't micromanage. He didn't ask me to train his relatives. He gave me a single, simple directive: find our weaknesses and fix them. Find Miller's weaknesses and exploit them. For the first week, I did nothing but dive into Apex's operations. They were good, but sloppy. Their logistics were inefficient, relying on 2 expensive third-party carriers. Their inventory system was outdated. I spent 72 hours mapping their entire supply chain, and by Thursday, I presented Marcus with a 15-page plan that would cut his overhead by 20% in 6 months. "I knew you were good," he said, looking over my projections. "I didn't know you were a magician." "It's not magic," I said. "It's just math and relationships. I'm going to call our old freight partners. They'll give us a better rate just to get away from the new management at Miller." While I was building Apex up, Miller Manufacturing was beginning to crumble. My phone, which I had expected to go silent, began to blow up. The first calls were from my old team. "Isabella, you have to help me," said Sarah, our head of accounting. "Jason just approved a $500,000 purchase order for premium Italian office furniture. He said it's a capital investment in brand prestige. Our payroll account is going to be overdrawn." "Sarah, I don't work there anymore," I said, my voice gentle but firm. "You need to talk to Thomas." "Thomas is in Florida," she whispered frantically. "He's not answering his phone, and Jason, he doesn't know the admin password for the payroll system. He tried to guess it and now it's locked." This was the clever trap I had left. The company wasn't just run by my knowledge, it was secured by it. The payroll, the supplier portals, the shipping manifests, the client database, all of it was locked behind a 2-factor authentication system that routed through my personal cell phone. I was the only admin. Without me, they couldn't pay their people, order new materials, or ship their existing orders. I told Sarah, calmly, how to contact the software provider and begin the 72-hour identity verification process to add a new admin. I wasn't a monster, but I also wasn't a fool. Then the client calls started. David, the $10 million account, called me on my new work line. He hung up on me, David said, his voice dangerously quiet. Who did? Jason, the new CEO. I called to ask about our Q4 shipment. He told me he was in a creative meeting and that I should email the support desk. So, I'm calling you. As of this moment, Apex Innovations is our new primary supplier. Can you handle the volume? I looked at the plan on my desk. Yes, David, I can. I'll have a contract over to you by noon. This was my investigation. I didn't need a private eye. The damaging information was flowing directly to me. My father and brother weren't just incompetent. They were actively arrogant, actively dismantling the company with their pride. I used my professional skills to do exactly what I had been hired to do. I identified a market opportunity, a massive, high-value client who had been abruptly abandoned by their previous supplier, and I seized it. By the end of my second week at Apex, I had streamlined their logistics, started poaching their top-tier talent, who were messaging me on LinkedIn, begging for an escape, and personally transferred Miller's single largest account to our books. The first call from my father came on a Friday evening, exactly 14 days after I had walked out. Isabella, he barked, no hello. What did you do? I'm not sure what you mean, I said, sipping a glass of wine and looking out at the city lights. The payroll system, the client list, and David. He's leaving us. He said he's going to Apex. You did this. You poached him. This is illegal. Is it? I asked. Is it illegal to answer my phone when a client calls me? Is it illegal to give a new employer my best work? You're the one who signed his last contract, Dad. Go read the non-compete clause. Oh, wait. You never included one. You thought handshakes were good enough. You ungrateful. I have to go, Dad, I said, cutting him off. I have a real job now, and unlike you, I'm not done working for the day. I hung up, the silence in my apartment feeling richer and more peaceful than it had in years. The house of cards I had built was beginning to teeter, and I, for one, couldn't wait to watch it fall. The calls became a daily occurrence. First, they were from Jason. His tone was a bizarre mix of bluster and panic. Izzy, this is ridiculous, he'd say, his voice cracking. The suppliers are asking for some kind of verification code I've never heard of. Just tell me what it is. I'm the CEO, you need to tell me. Jason, I don't work for you. I am not your head of support. I'm your competition, I'd reply, calmly highlighting my notes for a meeting with Marcus. You're just jealous. Dad was right, you're bitter because he chose me. He did choose you, Jason, I said. Now you get to do the job, all of it, goodbye. Then, the calls from my father grew more desperate. The anger was replaced by a wheedling, manipulative tone that turned my stomach. Isabella, your brother is. He's struggling, he's young, he just needs guidance. Your guidance. You can't just abandon your family like this. I didn't abandon my family, I said, my patience wearing thin. I left a job that was actively harming me, a job where I was disrespected and discarded. You know, for 3 years, I asked you for a raise, just a raise. I was running the entire company, and you paid me less than my own warehouse manager. But Jason, who has never worked a day in his life, you hand him a CEO title, and I'm sure a salary to match. Does that sound like family to you? It's not about the money, Isabella. It's about loyalty, he sputtered. You're right, it's not about the money. It's about the fact that you thought I was so stupid, so beaten down that I would just accept it. You thought I had nowhere else to go. You were wrong. The first major confrontation happened a week later. I was having lunch with Marcus at a restaurant downtown when my father and Jason stormed in. It was clear they had come for this express purpose. There you are, Thomas yelled, pointing a finger at me. The entire restaurant went quiet. You're not returning my calls." Marcus, ever the cool-headed CEO, simply dabbed his mouth with his napkin and looked at Thomas. "Thomas, Jason, what a surprise. I don't believe you have a reservation." "Stay out of this, Shaw," Jason snapped, trying to sound tough. "This is a family matter." He turned to me. "Izzy, you have to come back. This isn't funny anymore. The entire production line is down." "Why is it down, Jason?" I asked, taking a calm sip of my water. The supplier. They canceled our raw material shipment. They said our credit was no good. And David's company is sending us legal letters. It's a mess." I nodded slowly. "Yes, that's what happens when you don't pay your bills and when your largest client leaves. It's called insolvency. You should have learned about it in that expensive business school." Jason's face went white. He had no idea. Thomas stepped in, his voice dropping to what he probably thought was a reasonable tone, but it was shaking with rage. "Listen to me. You are going to come back and you are going to fix this. I am your father and I am telling you to quit this betrayal, and come home." "I am home," I said, gesturing to Marcus. "I'm at lunch with my boss, a boss who values my work, a boss who pays me what I'm worth." "I'll pay you," Thomas shouted, all pretense gone. "I'll match him, I'll match whatever he's paying you." This was the moment, the strategic R. Evil I had been holding onto. "You'll match him?" I asked, letting a small, sad laugh escape. "Dad, my signing bonus at Apex was more than your entire annual salary for the last 5 years." Thomas stopped. The number was so incomprehensible to him, so far beyond what he had ever considered paying me, that he couldn't process it. "And my new salary," I continued, "is 5 times what you paid me. Can you match that, Dad? Can Miller Manufacturing, which apparently can't even pay its steel supplier, afford to pay me what I'm actually worth? Or were you just hoping I'd come back for the same insulting paycheck you've been giving me for a decade?" My father's face was a mask of pure, unadulterated shock. The man who valued everything in dollars and cents finally understood. He had been so busy saving a few thousand on my salary that he had lost the millions I generated. Jason, meanwhile, looked like he was going to be sick. He paid you a bonus?" he whispered, horrified. "They pay for talent, Jason," I said, standing up. "It's another one of those business school concepts. You should look it up." I turned to Marcus. "I'm sorry, Marcus, this lunch is clearly over." "Nonsense," Marcus said, standing with me. He threw a $100 bill on the table and looked at my father. "Thomas, thank you for stopping by. And thank you, especially, for letting this brilliant woman go. She's the best investment I've ever made." We walked out of the restaurant, leaving my father and brother standing there, humiliated and exposed, in a room full of silent, staring witnesses. The first confrontation was over, and I had won. The weeks following the restaurant confrontation were a blur of escalating desperation on their part and methodical success on mine. My father and brother, having failed at public humiliation and private begging, now tried a new tactic: the smear campaign. They told our remaining suppliers that I had stolen proprietary trade secrets. They told our few remaining clients that I had been fired for gross incompetence and sabotage. It was a pathetic, poorly executed attempt to regain control. Unfortunately for them, I had spent 12 years building a reputation for being the exact opposite. When Thomas called our longtime freight partner and accused me of theft, the partner, a man named Sal, apparently laughed in his face. Sal called me immediately after. "Isabella, your old man has lost his mind. He called me ranting about trade secrets. I told him you were the only secret that company ever had. By the way, your new contracts are ready. Apex is getting our preferred partner rate starting Monday." While they were busy burning their remaining bridges, I was building my case. Marcus had given me free rein, and I was using it. I wasn't just fixing Apex's logistics. I was creating a new, dominant force in the industry. We acquired 2 smaller, specialized suppliers that Miller had always neglected, absorbing their talent and their client lists. We rolled out a new, hyper-efficient inventory system, one I had proposed at Miller for 3 years, only to be told by my father that it was an unnecessary expense. The final, irrefutable proof of their failure came not from me, but from an industry-wide credit report. Marcus slid it across my desk one morning, a single line highlighted in yellow. Miller Manufacturing had defaulted on a major business loan. Their credit rating had been downgraded to junk. "They're done," Marcus said, not with triumph, but with a kind of clinical finality. "They're leveraged to the hilt, their biggest accounts are gone, and their credit is shot. No supplier will extend them a line of credit. They'll be cash on delivery only. They won't last another month." I stared at the paper. This wasn't just a company failing. This was my entire life's work, my mother's legacy, being driven into the ground by the 2 men I had once trusted. A part of me expected to feel sad. Instead, I just felt a cold, hard resolve. They had made this bed. They needed to lie in it. The second, more powerful confrontation came via a legal letter. My father, in his final, desperate gambit, had hired a lawyer. He was threatening to sue me for breach of fiduciary duty and tortious interference. It was nonsense, and we both knew it. I had never been an officer of the company, he had made sure of that. I had no fiduciary duty, and I hadn't interfered, his clients had fled. Marcus retained Apex's top corporate lawyer, a shark named Ms. Graves. We met with my father and his small-town lawyer in a sterile conference room. Thomas and Jason sat across from us. My father looked 10 years older, his face haggard. Jason just looked terrified, staring at his hands. "My client, Mr. Miller," their lawyer began, "alleges that Ms. Miller used her inside knowledge to steal clients' and." Ms. Graves let him talk for about 3 minutes before she held up a hand. "Stop." The room fell silent. "Let's be perfectly clear," she said, her voice like steel. "Your client, Mr. Thomas Miller, is guilty of, at best, catastrophic mismanagement, and at worst, constructive fraud by misrepresenting the viability of his company to his lenders." Thomas's lawyer blanched. "Now see here." "No, you see here," Ms. Graves said, leaning forward. "We have statements from 3 of your former top clients, all attesting that they left Miller Manufacturing due to the unprofessionalism and blatant incompetence of the new CEO, Mr. Jason Miller." She slid a file across the table. "We also have a sworn affidavit from your former head of accounting, attesting that Mr. Jason Miller attempted to make a non-essential $500,000 purchase that would have bankrupted your payroll account, a move that can only be described as reckless." Jason sank so low in his chair, he almost disappeared. "And finally," Ms. Graves continued, "we have this." She slid over the credit report. "Your company is insolvent. You defaulted on your loan with First National. You have no clients, no credit, and no case. You are not in a position to sue anyone. You are, however, in a position to be sued by your creditors, your former clients, and, frankly, by Apex Innovations for wasting our time." Thomas looked at the papers, his hands trembling. The fight was gone. He was a broken man. What do you want?" he whispered, looking at me. This was the moment. The spell was broken. Jason was crying silently. Thomas was defeated. "I want you to stop," I said, my voice quiet but carrying across the room. "I want you to stop blaming me for your own mistake. You did this. You chose him. You destroyed your own company because your pride was more important than your sense of decency." I stood up. "The lawsuit is dropped, effective immediately. You will sign a letter of apology to me for the slanderous claims you've been spreading. And you will never, ever contact me or any employee at Apex Innovations again. If you do, Ms. Graves will file a countersuit for harassment and defamation that will personally bankrupt you both. Are we clear?" Thomas Miller, the great patriarch, the king of Miller Manufacturing, just nodded, his eyes fixed on the table. He was no longer a tyrant. He was just a sad, old man who had lost everything because he couldn't bear to see his daughter succeed. 2 months later, the industry was gathering for the annual Aerospace Manufacturing Guild Awards dinner. It was the biggest event of our year, a massive gala held in the city's grandest hotel ballroom. Apex Innovations had sponsored a table, and I was there, not as a guest, but as a speaker. I had been asked to give a short keynote on future-proofing the supply chain, a recognition of the incredible, rapid turnaround I had engineered at Apex. I was wearing a dark green dress that had cost more than my first car, my hair and makeup were professionally done, and as I mingled, I was greeted by name by CEOs and industry leaders. I had never felt more respected. I had never felt more powerful. Then I saw them. My father and Jason were not at a sponsored table. They were standing near the back bar by the service entrance. They weren't there as guests. They were there as ghosts. They looked gaunt, out of place in their old, ill-fitting suits. They were clearly not invited, but had snuck in, hoping to corner anyone, to beg for a loan or a buyout. Jason saw me first. He nudged my father, his eyes wide with a mixture of awe and resentment. My father turned and his face crumpled. Seeing me like this, confident, celebrated, thriving, while they were reduced to skulking in the shadows, was clearly the final, public humiliation. I ignored them. I took my seat at the head table next to Marcus. The dinner program began. After the appetizers, the guild president went to the podium. And now, we have a special keynote from a woman who has truly redefined operational efficiency in our industry in record time. She has been the architect of one of the most stunning corporate turnarounds we've seen in years. Please welcome the Senior Strategic Consultant for Apex Innovations, Ms. Isabella Miller. The ballroom erupted in applause. As I walked to the stage, I made a point to pass the back corner where my father and Jason were standing. I didn't look at them, but I could feel their eyes burning into me. I gave my speech. I spoke about data, about agility, about building systems that were resilient and transparent. I spoke about the importance of investing in talent and of trusting the people who do the work. A company's greatest asset, I said, isn't its product line or its logo. It's the people who show up every day and solve the problems. A leader who forgets that, who values ego over expertise, hasn't just failed their team, they've failed their company. The applause was deafening. I walked off the stage, my heart hammering, and I knew what I had to do. I bypassed my table and walked directly to the back of the room. My father and brother were trapped. Security was already eyeing them, but I got there first. "You shouldn't be here," I said, my voice low and calm. "Isabella," my father whispered, his voice thick. He looked desperate. "That speech, you're brilliant, my girl, you always were. I was a fool." "Yes, you were," I said without malice. "It was just a fact." "Please," he begged, grabbing my arm. "There has to be something you can do. The bank, they're seizing the building on Monday. It's all gone, everything I built." "Everything I built," I corrected him, "and you let it die." I'll give it to you," he said, his voice rising in panic. "It's yours, the company, Miller Manufacturing. Just take it, save it. It's all I have to give." This was it, the final, pathetic offer. The thing I had once wanted more than anything. And he was offering it to me now, a worthless, debt-ridden shell. I looked at Jason. He was just standing there, a hollowed-out version of the golden boy he had been. He wouldn't even meet my eyes. "No," I said. My father blinked. "No, what? What do you mean no?" "I mean no, I don't want it." I leaned in closer. "I'm not here to save you. I'm here to tell you one last thing." I pulled a business card from my purse. It was from Marcus. "Apex Innovations," I said, "is aware that your assets are being liquidated by the bank on Monday. Marcus has authorized me to make a bid on the physical machinery. We're prepared to offer 10 cents on the dollar for the contents of the warehouse. It's a fair offer. You're credi. Tours will be glad to get it." The realization dawned on my father's face, a slow-motion wave of horror. I wasn't there to save his company. I was there to buy its bones. You're a vulture," he whispered, his face ashen. "No, Dad," I said, pressing the card into his hand. "I'm a businesswoman. You, of all people, should understand that." Jason finally looked at me. his eyes filled with a dawning, terrible respect. He looked at his father, then back at me, and in that moment, he finally made a decisive action. He took the card from my father's limp hand. I'll call Mr. Shaw's office on Monday, he mumbled. I'll coordinate the sale. It was a full surrender. He had at last broken free. I nodded once, turned my back on them both, and walked away. I returned to my table, to the applause of my peers, leaving my father and brother in the shadows to manage the ruins of the empire they had so proudly and so foolishly destroyed. The liquidation of Miller Manufacturing was swift and brutal. As Jason had promised, he coordinated the sale of the physical assets to Apex. I didn't attend. Marcus sent a team, and by the end of the week, the machinery I had worked on for 12 years was being installed in a new Apex warehouse, one I was now in charge of setting up. My father lost everything. The building was seized by the bank. Their house, which had been leveraged against the business loan, was sold at auction. He and Jason were forced to move into a small, rented apartment. The social exile was total. The story of Thomas Miller's arrogance, handing his company to his unqualified son and shunning the daughter who was his golden goose, had become a legend in our industry, a cautionary tale told at bars and in boardrooms. About a month later, I received a letter. It was from Jason. It was handwritten on simple notebook paper. He didn't make excuses, he just apologized. Isabella, it read, I know sorry doesn't mean anything. I was arrogant and I was stupid. I believed what Dad told me, that I was a natural, and I never stopped to see that you were the one doing all the work. I never respected you, and I am ashamed of that. I am ashamed of how I treated you. What you've done at Apex is incredible. You deserved everything he gave me and more. I am working now at a logistics warehouse on the loading dock. It's hard work. I wish I had appreciated what you did for us and for me. I hope one day you can forgive me. I read the letter twice. It was the first honest thing he had ever said to me. I did not write back, but I held on to the letter. It was a start. My father never reached out. I heard, through Sal, that he had tried to get a job as a consultant, but his reputation was so toxic that no one would hire him. He was a ghost in the industry he had once helped build. As for me, my life had just begun. A year after the awards dinner, Marcus promoted me to Chief Operating Officer of Apex Innovations. I had a team I had built from the ground up, a salary that was truly life-changing, and the respect of an entire industry. I used my new resources to do what I had always wanted to do. I started a scholarship fund, in my mother's name, for women in engineering and logistics, to make sure that other brilliant, quiet women wouldn't have to fight as hard as I did to be seen. One evening, I was leaving my office late. As I walked through the parking garage, I saw a familiar, stooped figure standing by my car. It was my father. He looked terrible. He was thin, and his silver hair was unkempt. Isabella, he said, his voice a dry rasp. I stopped, my keys in my hand. Dad. I just wanted to see you, he said. What you've done. I'm proud of you, Isabella. I was wrong. I was so wrong. I was an old fool, and I'm sorry. He was crying. This man who had never shown me an ounce of vulnerability, this man who had roared and blustered, was weeping in a parking garage. I looked at him, and the last of the ice in my veins finally, after all this time, melted away. I didn't feel anger. I didn't even feel pity. I just felt done. I know, Dad, I said. It was all I could give him. I got in my car. He didn't move. He just stood there, watching me. I drove out of the garage, and as I looked in my rearview mirror, I saw him getting smaller and smaller, a relic of a past I had fully and finally escaped. I was at peace, my vindication complete, leaving the man who had tried to destroy me to face the definitive consequences of his own making.